I'm just going to start the ball rolling with a question that I know would come up, and that came up when we screened the film during the film festival. David, what was the title, Inland Empire? Where did that come from?
How are y'all doing? Okay, good. You doing okay? That's okay. I was talking to Laura here one day, and maybe you heard this story before, but she said her boyfriend, now husband, was from the Inland Empire, which is the Inland Empire she was talking about was an area east of LA. And she kept on talking, but I drifted off, and I stopped her, and I said, that's the title of this film, and Inland Empire. So a little bit later on, my brother was cleaning the basement of my parents' house in Montana, and behind a bureau found a scrapbook that had fallen back there, and he dusted it off. I looked at it and found out it was my little scrapbook from when I was 5, when I lived in Spokane, Washington, and he sent me this scrapbook. And I got it and opened it up, and the first picture in it was an aerial view of Spokane, Washington, and underneath it, it had the words Inland Empire. So it was kind of a beautiful thing, and I figured that really was a good title for the film.
Anyone have any questions? Yeah, Jack. I'm just going to repeat that. The question is about transferring the film, which was shot digitally, to 35 millimeter, and about David's preference for having it screened on 35.
This film was shot in a low-res DV format with a Sony PD-150. And then there's this beautiful machine called the Alchemist that upreses things. And this Alchemist upreses it so beautifully. So Inland Empire can be played digitally, approaching high def, and it can also go over to film. And when it goes over to film, the film adds something to it, which is very beautiful. And but it's pretty much the same digitally or on film.
What made David choose to shoot it on the PD-150?
I worked on this film in a different way. I would get an idea, and the idea may be just like one scene. And so I would write out this scene, and I would then shoot that scene instead of trying to get other ideas and write another scene. So I started experimenting with this Sony PD-150 for my website, and started falling in love with this thing. And instead of seeing it like a toy, I'd see it like some kind of beautiful small machine that made everything go so smoothly and so much faster. And the possibilities were so great, and it has automatic focus. And I fallen in love with this. So, what was the question again?
Why the PD-150?
Yeah, the Sony PD-150 was what I started with. So once I was down the road a bit, and see how things start coming along, a bigger thing that could be now a feature, I was committed to this camera. So I continued with it.
Speaking of working in a different way, this was a different way of working for Justin and Laura. It was a film that was shot over a long period of time, and I just wanted to hear about your experiences working on the movie.
David just called me and said, I have some ideas that we're going to shoot. So he asked me to go out to Los Angeles, and it was great. He just sort of sent me a couple of scenes. And Laura had already started work with David well in advance of that. And I just sort of came out and we shot sort of scene by scene, sort of not really knowing where the story was going, but knowing basically what the structure of the scenes were and the general constructs of what we're going to be doing. And we'd shoot him, and then we'd go away, and then he'd call us, back, and we'd go back out to Los Angeles and we'd shoot some more. So it was a really sort of fun way of working because you didn't really have to focus on sculpting sort of that trajectory performance. You just sort of were able to just focus on the scenes at hand. It was sort of fun to sort of just be given scenes and work in that way.
There wasn't the same kind of time pressure.
Yeah, there wasn't the same constraints of the normal, studio or film that's produced in a normal way, where you obviously 40 days shooting schedule, or 30 or 90, whatever. It was open ended.
I'll just add to that, not only in terms of what Justin was saying, the feeling you have of liberation as an actor when you have only the moment. There isn't the before or after when you're shooting scene by scene, which I felt like was a great luxury. But also in terms of working digitally with this camera and the way David shot the film, it's just extraordinary to go to work and start shooting. And about, 10 hours later, we'd shot for about 9.5 hours. And, we would spend an hour on a scene not having to reload. And so we'd have done in one organic moment, the master, the close-ups, the coverage, everything at the same time.
David was also operating the camera a lot most of the time. So that was also just really fun. It was a much more tactile experience working with a director, which is always tactile, but at the same time this was even more so because the crew really had that feel of sort of a bunch of friends getting together and working for a greater thing. So the crew was very pared down. All the things that normally have 10 people working in a department had one or two, and so it was a much more intimate environment and a lot of fun.
And a wonderful reminder when you're on a movie and no one's referring to, if you're looking for the director, oh, he's in Video Village. And you have to figure out where that is to try to find your director. He's right there with you. It's quite wonderful.
I love you dearly. I'm going to let Laura and Justin talk.
I'll tell you what it's about.
There's a lot of films out in the world, and there's a lot of films that are, kind of easy to understand, and that's really good. And as soon as you do something that's a hair more abstract, then you get into a thing. And some people, they really want to understand everything. And other people, they appreciate an abstraction, and they like a room to dream. And I love films that allow me room to dream. And I really believe in this thing of intuition, that people feel, think their way. And they know, but it's not a knowing that really can be said in words all the time. And cinema is such a beautiful language, and it can say things some with words, but some with other things that are abstract. And actors are very beautiful beings. They can go in a way without words, and talking to them is some words and some kind of maybe moving the hand, a hair, and then doing a rehearsal, and then talking a little bit, and maybe moving the hand a little bit, and they get into this space, and they love this abstraction. and they catch a thing. It doesn't happen on an intellectual level, really. It happens in another way, and then they catch it and they make it real for that scene, that moment, like Laura said. And it's kind of a magical thing.
I just want to add, listening to that description, that is why actors go wherever David tells us. That was so beautiful.
Is there any significance to the numbers 47 and 222?
222.
Old TV series.
I know I was going to say. And Karen Valentine, she drops the books at the beginning.
Heavy significance. What are the chances of another Twin Peaks thing that will tie up all the loose ends? 0. Well, that's part of the story. And so you got to roll that around as how it fits in the story. But how come it was part of the story? It happened that I was invited to the Camera Image Film Festival, which takes place in Łódź, Poland. As a matter of fact, I just came back from Poland 2 days ago, and Justin was over in Poland, in Łódź, Poland. And how many here have been to Łódź, Poland? Well, more than I figured. And but it's someplace you all should all go, and it's a great city with a great film school, a lot of emphasis on the arts. It's a poor place, but filled with a lot of enthusiasm and hope for a brighter future there. And I went there and made friends with the guys that run the festival and got to photograph these factories. It was the textile capital of the world in the 1800s. Huge, giant factories built like cathedrals of work, and they're so beautiful. Now all derelict and kind of falling apart. But I guess the world influences us, and I started getting ideas coming from this place. And one thing leads to another. And it was part of this process, how Inland Empire came into being. Maybe Justin would like to tell you his impression of Łódź, Poland. And Laura has some stories, because when we went there with Laura, we needed to go there for the film to put Laura in that place, but we ended up going in the month of January. Not only did we end up going in the month of January, but a cold front just happened to be moving in from Moscow, and the temperature went down and down, and we thought, like, the Poles, they got to be really tough, because this is so cold. And but it actually was a record, and
minus 32.
And
I'll never forget it as long as.
And Laura needed to be out in this little bitty outfit, and the other girls, and so it was kind of dangerous, really, honestly, because it was like brutally cold. Laura, why don't you share some of these stories?
I was just grateful for the opportunity to wear a tank top in minus 32. And David gave me lots of borscht to help us through.
And I was given the tidbit some vodka as well.
But I wouldn't take it, remember?
No, okay.
That's what they gave me.
Yeah.
How many scenes down the road did it happen that I saw the whole? The thing is that every film, if you're writing a script, you get ideas, but you don't get the whole thing at once. I don't know anybody that's got the whole thing at once. So, but these things happen in this script. You get an idea and you write it out, and you get another idea and you write it out, and you don't know how the whole thing's going to unfold until you get to a certain point. So this time I'm shooting the scenes, as they come along, and instead of just leaving them in script form. 6 scenes in, I think.
And are all 6 of those scenes in the finished film?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. A compliment on the coffee, which I hope, as many of you possibly, come on. Yeah. And then a question about the mix between humor and fear and horror, the mix of emotions in David's films, and how that works for Justin and Laura.
My 2 cents is that it's always shocking when I see David's movies. I had the same experience with this movie as I did with Mulholland Drive, and that his sets are so lively and so much fun and just really fun work environments with lots of laughter and obviously when the work needs to get serious, it gets serious. But it's always completely antithetical for what you actually see when you watch the film. And that's a wonderful thing, and that most things that you work on, you sort of go, oh, okay, I get where this is going, and this is that scene that sort of fills that thing. These you have no idea because he's placing them and editing them in such interesting ways and scoring them and putting sounds in. So there might be a scene which you thought was sort of a lighthearted scene or something which when you see in his films can be incredibly, it could just have a completely different mood just by something that he's chosen to kind of a sound that he might have put under it or something like that. So I always love watching his, I've always loved watching his movies, but in particular just the contrast between what it's like to work on them and then seeing them is always, the gulf is so huge.
Just to add to that too, from my experience, I've never talked about this in front of David, but when I've talked about movies that I've done also without David, there have been, or many of the things that I've worked on end up being movies that walk a line between comedy and extremely dark. And whenever I have the opportunity to talk about it, I commend David as my teacher and my guide along the way, having worked with him when I was 17, because he guides you so beautifully as an actor to live in a world that is so boundaryless, but to stay as, hopefully, as authentic and as honest as you can. And then within that find humor and sadness and all of those things. But I think the fact that the world is so wide open in the movies that, actors have the privilege of working with him on, you feel like you can explore anything you want, and always he tries to keep you honest. So it's a great opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity then for humor, because you're trying to stay honest, and then that which is funny comes out of it, as opposed to trying for a laugh.
A lot of times when you ask Dave, as an actor, your instinct is to, I think, find certain plot points that you can latch on to. And many times when I've asked David certain things, I remember in Mulholland Drive in particular, when we were shooting a scene with a cowboy, and I was saying, I don't understand where this, how does this play in and his reply was always just wonderfully like, I don't know, let's find out, and it was this, no, but it's a wonderful way of working, and that you go into something and it's not about, he hasn't cut the thing together in his head, and we're not just sort of pushing something through the mill. You're making something, and it's that spontaneous thing. The script is there, the words are there, the scene is there, and then after that, it's, he's going to go in and sort of into his editing, bay and really create something special out of that.
And most of the time, it's just reminding me of something. But most of the time, you feel like you are all together along the ride of discovering it. Except, as I was going to say that, then I realized it wasn't true, because I remember on Wild at Heart shooting the scene where we're in Texas and the porn stars are dancing and all this stuff is going on. And I remember behind Nicolas Cage and I's shoulder, I said, David, is that Tom Mix and Pancho Villa? Why are they here? They're here. He's like, Tidbit, we're at the border. Oh, I'm sorry. I realized just how foolish and naive I was. So sometimes maybe he has a clearer idea than some of us.
Regardless of what you think of the film, don't you think that Laura Dern gave an exceptional performance?
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Mom, and all my friends that I invited tonight.
And Justin too, but he can take this.
Stop it. All right. Thank you.
No, it's a strange world because, I don't know the way the things are in the world, but we'll see the Academy Awards in 2007. And I don't know if we'll see Laura's name even nominated, and this gets me. And but it's such a great performance, and it's just the way the world is, I guess. But anyway, I'm glad you like that coffee.
We all like the movie too.
Oh, that's super good.
I think because of the lateness of the hour, we're going to have to call it quits. But I want to thank you all for coming, and Justin.
Thank you all
Laura,
very much.
David.